Hello and welcome to the Moral Medicine channel. My name is Eric, and over the coming months, I'm going to be interviewing a series of patients, family members, and researchers about the devastating condition known as post-finasteride syndrome. Hello and welcome to the Moral Medicine channel. My name is Eric, and today I have the privilege of interviewing Kyle, who is a fellow PFS sufferer. Kyle, why don't you introduce yourself for the audience?
Hi there. My name is Kyle. I am 24 years old. I've been suffering from PFS since February of 2022, so a little over a year, and I currently reside in the United States.
Thanks, Kyle. So,
Mhm.
why don't you start by telling me a little bit about your life before taking finasteride?
Yeah, so I was a recent college graduate. I graduated in 2021 with a bachelor's in English and a teaching certification with that. Many of the things I kind of enjoyed to do centered around creative pursuits. My kind of whole life plan was to do something regarding art, and whether that be doing music with friends or writing a book or directing or whatever. It was always my goals were always sort of artistically focused. And I'm sure kind of having like a bit of a neurodivergent, um, mm, I guess like mental state contributed to a lot of that. A lot of my plans and stuff, like having OCD and ADHD, was kind of a big part of my life before PFS, like dealing with those kind of mental things. So yeah,
And can you tell me briefly, when did you decide to take finasteride and why did you decide to take it?
I decided around July of 2021 to try it out for the first time because I had been experiencing some form of hair loss since the previous summer. So in around June or July of 2020, I kind of started to notice thinning hair, and I wanted to be proactive with it.
Okay. And how was the drug prescribed to you exactly? What kind of safety information were you provided with?
In terms of safety information, I can't really remember what was in the actual, like user agreement or the document, but I got my prescription for finasteride through Keeps. So
Okay.
there wasn't really, an actual doctor prescribing it to me. It was just like through like a telehealth thing
Hmm.
through the company Keeps. Mhm.
Yeah. So for those who aren't aware, Keeps is a telehealth company that I think I've never used it, but I believe it's in the same category as Romans, Hers, Hims, and some other companies that essentially send on a recurring monthly basis, I believe, prescription drugs such as finasteride. Do you mind telling me a little bit about your experience purchasing the drug from this company?
Yeah. So it was a very brief process. It involved like me taking pictures of my hairline and sending them, I guess, to a supposed doctor, whoever that was. It felt like I was talking to a bot whenever I received the email and the messaging back saying that my request had been accepted. Um, and that was pretty much it. After those pictures were sent and they gave me the go ahead, I signed up for one of the prescription plans, and then I got, a little bottle of finasteride about a week and a half later.
Right. So there was no real, at no point in your interaction with this company were you told by an actual person online or on the phone that there was a risk associated with this drug. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, um, I think on Keeps's actual website, there are little like articles that they have discussing like the risk. I think there might actually be one on PFS on there, but it's like it happens to 1 to 2% of people. And the way they describe it is like possible depression and sexual side effects like watery semen and or like
Right.
erectile dysfunction. And that's pretty much it, which as both of us know, PFS is such a wider umbrella, like compared to just those symptoms.
Yeah. So, on that note, can you tell me a little bit about your experience taking the drug? So, how long did you take it for, and when did you first notice that there was something wrong?
So and this is a part of my story where I was being very foolish with it, because in July of 2021, I took finasteride for the first time for about a week. So I took maybe 4 or 5 pills at 1 milligram or whatever. And I, even on that amount, um, I was experiencing certain sexual things, like my libido was lower. I was experiencing watery semen and like mild erectile dysfunction on that. And that was within 1 week. And it was um those symptoms dissipated within, the suggested framework or time frame that these companies claim. And so after that, I kind of wasn't worried about, because during that time it really scared me, and so I researched a bunch about propecia and finasteride and the side effects for it. And I came across PFS, like certain, it might have been propecia help, I'm not totally sure, but I, stumbled upon those kind of communities and realized that this was a real thing, or at least people were saying it was. And so after that, um, I basically was like, okay, this is pretty automatic in terms of giving me sexual side effects, so I'm going to not take this. Um, and so I started using minoxidil for a little bit, um, between July of 2021 and February of 2022. And in February, I just decided to say, hey, maybe I can try and like doing a micro dose of finasteride, or like, decreasing the dosage to 0.25 milligrams. And maybe that will, I can dodge the symptoms, um, because perhaps I was taking too much. And I took 1/4 of one pill on like the 24th of February of 2022. And by the 26th, that Saturday, my left testicle started aching like somebody had just like kicked me in the balls, basically. And I just felt like this intense feeling of dread and anxiety. And that was basically, I was like, okay, well, here we go. This is the crash. And it was.
Right. So, the immediate experience that you had when you stopped taking finasteride for the second time was an acute pain in your testicle, and you started feeling anxiety. Can you walk me through like what else happened at that point when you stopped taking the drug for the second time?
Mhm. Yeah, it was, yeah. So other than the testicular pain and the anxiety, it was kind of just a lot of, I wouldn't call it derealization at this point, which is a symptom that I've experienced like heavily through this, but it was kind of just feeling completely out of it. And in the day I crashed, not all the symptoms had set in, but within a week, like maybe 2 to 3 days later, my vision was incredibly blurry. The brain fog had kind of set in, so I could barely think or process information. It was difficult to even kind of just move through the world and interact with people. Everything became so cloudy and so dense. I felt like I was barely like seeing things and comprehending like what was in front of me. And so that was maybe 2 to 3 days after. And then I had to go to my uncle's funeral. And so at the funeral, I'm crying, but I don't feel any emotion at all. Like I'm just completely blank. My body hurts, like I'm having joint pains, um, and just like hot, like almost fever-like symptoms. And that was kind of those 4 to 5 days pretty much were like the worst of it, of the crash in the beginning.
Mhm,
That's when everything set in.
mhm. Okay, and since you crashed, have you developed any new symptoms?
After the crash, and probably in the following 7 to 8 months, I would say the symptoms were erectile dysfunction, low to non-existent libido, um, really like intense brain fog, like I was slurring my speech, and I still kind of like I'm kind of doing it now. but it was very intense at the beginning. I felt basically like I was drunk. Like I had no, my motor controls were just shot. Even like I was bumping, I became like clumsy basically overnight. Um, I had pretty much total anhedonia, which is lack of pleasure. I didn't feel, nothing made me happy, excited, or anything. And it was actually like a chore to sit down and watch TV and interact with people. Um, this is also kind of the time where like I became super depersonalized. And it probably wasn't until 1 to 2 months ago I could even really recognize a picture of myself. Like, and I don't know whether that is a direct result of all the cognitive side effects or if that's just actual PTSD, which I think a lot of PFS sufferers legitimately have because of how insane the situation is for many people when they crash. Um, and then probably other like kind of more minor side effects or symptoms or genital numbness to varying degrees. Um, and actually, I forgot the biggest one, which was muscle wastage and muscle weakness. Like I lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. And so I went from 140 to 120. Um, and I basically felt so weak that it was difficult to do. I was out of breath walking up a flight of stairs. I'm 24. I'd been skateboarding, rollerblading for over a decade. I'm like was incredibly athletic before this. And it was difficult for me to do just daily activities without feeling extreme fatigue. Not to mention the insane dietary problems that came along with this, where if I would eat gluten, like I did a test for it, a stool sample, and I came back that out of a scale of 2, I was a 7 in a gluten intolerance. I've never been gluten intolerant before this. So the way my digestive system works was just completely destroyed as well.
Yeah, it's pretty devastating what this drug can do to you. And yeah, I certainly experienced a lot of those same symptoms as well. Have you visited a clinician? And if so, can you talk to me a bit about your experience?
Yeah. I in probably in April, so like a month or two after I crashed, I went to just a general practitioner basically, and I was seen or I was saw by a physician's assistant who basically was I was freaking out at this time, so I was concerned about testosterone levels. You know, basically I wanted like a hormonal panel, and even that was kind of like seen as like a little weird for him. He was kind of uncomfortable with me asking to even run those tests. And when I was describing my symptoms, he basically his only answer was, "That's strange. You know, that shouldn't be happening to a 20." I was 23 at the time. Should be happening to a 23-year-old. And I said, "Yeah, like I agree. You know, maybe we can try to figure something out." And so I got like all those panels done. Everything was basically normal. And then after that, I kind of wanted to talk about my anxiety with him. And he's like, I think a direct quote was, "Yeah, well, you know, World War III is at our doorstep. So everybody's kind of anxious at this point," which was crazy to me. Like that made me really, really upset. And at that point, I basically swore off doctors because of that experience and also what I'd been reading online with all these other PFS guys who have been to the doctor and then basically said these symptoms are psychosomatic or turned away. And then after that, I went to a urologist and I said, I'm having kind of like Peroni like degradation of my penile tissue. Like something's gone wrong there. It feels horrible. Like it feels rubbery and just terrible. And I also at that point had developed a varicocele in my on the left side, on the same side that my testicle was hurting when I crashed. And he's like, "Yeah, you got it, but you know, these are benign and I don't see an issue with it." And that was pretty much that whole meeting too. So, and after that, I didn't really see many doctors for months and months afterwards.
Yeah, awful. And how long have you been off the drug now, Kyle?
I'd say a year and a little over a month.
Okay.
Mhm.
And can you describe the impact that PFS has had on your life? romantically, socially, in terms of academics, in terms of, yeah, career wise, etc.
Hmm. Yeah, in terms of career wise, I mean, I worked as much as I could throughout the first, 4 to 5 months. And then at around the 6 month mark, I had to quit my job. I just couldn't do it. It was taking a humongous toll on my body. I couldn't function like I used to. It would hit 9 or 10 p.m. and I would need to like sleep immediately. And I was working a food service job at the time, and it completely derailed that, as well as most other aspects of life. I would say I'm lucky that I later on through this I kind of began having little moments and windows of feeling, maybe I'd for 10 minutes one day feel like romantic feelings again, and I'd get to experience that, and then it would just dissipate. So in terms of my romantic life, it's pretty much non-existent at this point because I don't want to, when you don't feel emotions like normal people do, and when kind of lose those innate desires for people and for love, it makes trying to find a romantic relationship not even necessarily impossible, but just impractical and improbable and strange, and not to mention kind of slightly traumatic, especially for people. I'm I wouldn't even say fortunate, but my symptoms lean more towards the cognitive side, where I felt my brain was just utterly destroyed by this, and the sexual side effects were kind of maybe peripheral a little bit. But yeah, certainly most aspects of my life, I've had to completely change my expectations of what these next few years are going to look like, because it wasn't the future that I had planned for myself at all. My motivation is so low, and I just don't really resemble like the person I was before the crash.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that, and it's certainly very devastating what this drug can do to you. Um, Kyle, finally, do you feel like you had enough warning and information about the possible consequences of taking finasteride to provide you with informed consent?
I wouldn't say so, really on any level. The way that the marketing and the PR kind of advertisements in articles from these companies that are selling finasteride, like Hims and Keeps, they almost go out of their way to make PFS seem as if it's like a nocebo effect, or that people who claim it are actually crazy. There's a lot of corporate gaslighting that is going on, and I would say that I this is not informed consent at all, and the same goes out to people suffering from PSSD. It's the same way with psychiatrists as it is with, in this case, not even a real doctor, just some corporate bot that prescribes hair loss drugs. So I would say no.
Yeah. Well,
Mm.
thank you so much for speaking today, Kyle, and thank you for the courage to be so candid about your experience with PFS.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This means a lot.
Just finally, I mean, do you have anything you want to say to the community of fellow sufferers who might feel very alone or might feel a bit of trepidation about talking about their experience with this disease?
Yeah, I would say I have so much empathy for you if you're feeling uncomfortable about trying to come out to this. I mean, even saying these things to my parents is difficult, and still is. This conversation is never easy to have. Um, but I would say that this community is kind of, to me at least, feels like it's being strengthened through the videos we're doing now, and also like how many Discord servers there are and WhatsApp groups. The communication between PFS sufferers has become way more one-to-one than just like forum posting and you wait a few days. So I would say if you're feeling isolated, look for the support groups, look for the Discord servers or whatever, because they are out there. I'm in multiple of them, And that has been a really, really therapeutic and just informative way to spend time. Because with PFS, uh, there's a lot of rumination that happens. And if you feel like you're getting stuck in these thought loops and having nobody to talk to about this, I mean, those kind of patterns, this stuff leads to suicide, and we've seen it time and time again. So I would say try to find your people within this community, because we are absolutely out there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Kyle.
Thank you.